weeks ago, we were trying to talk about what could I come and talk about. And we started kind of playing around with the topic of this entrepreneur, which is not a word I had used every single day. And we had come up with, I think you see in your program, we talked about the balancing act of entrepreneurship. Well, as I got ready to go through and kind of pull this together, I really said, you know what, it's not about the balancing act. For me, it's been about the integration of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. So I took the liberty, Antoinette, and changed the title to the integration of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, because that's really been my story and my journey over the last 25 years, and the story is continuing to play out. So that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. But let me do a quick informal survey. So how many of you consider yourselves entrepreneurs? What is that? Okay, so that's good. So let me start there. Who knows what entrepreneurship is? Mia.
So it's when you're in an organization or you work for a company and you want to promote yourself within. So you want to own your brand and not only share it with the organization, but also share it with the outside world.
Yeah.
And Dawn is the perfect example of that, being that she is the vice president for Coca-Cola, but she also owns her brand internally and externally.
Great definition. I like that one better than the one that I had. So she summed it up very well. So it's entrepreneur-like skills inside a formal organization. So just think of it as you're working for the organization, but you're acting entrepreneurial within those four walls. If anybody, like Contessa's working at Coca-Cola, she's an entrepreneur there, but she has her own business and entrepreneurial outside as well. So let me ask the question again. How many of you consider yourself an intrapreneur? Okay. Yeah, we can. I'm going to ask that one too. How many are entrepreneurs? Okay, a lot of entrepreneurs in the room. And how about both? I'm both as well. Okay, so we all clear what entrepreneur is? It's just acting like an entrepreneur within the confinements of someone else's organization, firm, or industry. Okay? So we're going to talk about, and I'm use it in the context of my work experience, how those two have ebbed and flowed in and out of life for me. So I could tell you that, you know, most of my career, again, has been a little bit of both. And I started thinking about this, and I said, gosh, when I was a little child, I had this burning desire to be my own boss. Never really thought about working for somebody else. And I grew up with, you know, my parents did, you know, pretty good, but they only gave me what I needed. And there was a lot of things that I wanted, and they always instilled into me from the very beginning that if to get the things you really want, you got to work for it. I'm not going to hand it to you. So I took that at face value and tried to work as early as possible to make my own money. So as a child, my mom would tell you today, she's like, you know, you came in every day with a new business that you wanted to go run and earn your own money. So I had a lawn mowing business at one time. I had the traditional babysitting business at one time. I grew up playing instruments, so I said, sure, I'll teach smaller kids how to play instruments. So I taught private violin lessons at age of 16. $25 an hour I was charging back then. It was only a few years ago, by the way. See if y'all were listening. So I always had this big entrepreneurial spirit. And then I always looked, when I went to work for somebody else, for the jobs that paid the most. Not necessarily the most exciting jobs, but which ones are going to pay me the most money. So I did a lot of non-traditional things. So anybody in here know anybody from Iowa? From Iowa.
Know anyone from Iowa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, now you know one more. So that's where I grew up. So as you can imagine, usually it gets confused with potatoes. It's the corn state. And so I had a job for a couple summers with a seed company, detasseling corn. Who's ever heard of detasseling corn? I won't bore you with what it was, but it was hard work out in the elements, very early mornings, very long days. But at that time, only a few years ago, it was paying $7.25 an hour. What's the minimum wage today?
It's like $7.25.
So you see the pattern of what I'm building here and why I'm kind of where I am today. So I did that. I worked for a minor league baseball stadium and concession. So I always had jobs that I didn't have to punch a specific clock, jobs that were flexible, jobs that allowed me to kind of create it and make it what I want it to be. So I'm pretty spoiled now by the time I get to college in terms of the type of jobs that I wanted to have. And in college, I did things like residence hall assistant. Anybody did that? The residence hall RA? Pretty autonomous kind of creativity, get to put your own spin on it. Anybody do the orientation advisor sessions in the summer for the students coming in? Again, Yes, a lot of fun, right? You were like the big wig because you get to meet all the parents and all the kids, and you were the person that said, here's your schedule. So again, kind of entrepreneurial in nature, but working in the confinements of somebody else's structure. So I'm going to fast forward. So again, I've set myself up now to be very picky about what jobs I take in corporate America. So I have a degree in accounting. You may not believe that, but decided very early on I was not a person that could sit at a desk with a bunch of numbers. However, I can count them very well. And so I said, I need to be out with people. So I'm going to put up a slide for you, just a picture that talks about my 25 years as an entrepreneur and entrepreneur. And I'm not going to take you through all of these boxes, and I'll summarize them for you. So I've been in the business, consumer packaged goods business, for 25 years. I've worked for two number one companies, one being Frito-Lay for 18 years, the number one snack food company in the world, and the second one, currently, Coca-Cola, the number one beverage company in the world. So I've been fortunate to work for the best. I don't know what it means to work for number two. And in that time frame, I've always had roles of increasing responsibilities. I've had 16 roles in 25 years, so I don't stay still very long. And I have led teams as large as 5,000 with a revenue responsibility of $2.8 billion. And I don't say that to brag at all. I'm only sharing this with you for perspective and talk about the importance of entrepreneurship and how they can coexist and you can be successful in both. And I really think it's my drive for entrepreneurship that I've leveraged in corporate that's allowed me to do what I've been able to do. What you don't see up here, so you see all the intrapreneurial positions, but what you don't see is the entrepreneurial positions that were going on simultaneously as I made the corporate climb. So I mentioned earlier I did a lot of network marketing type of roles. So I was in Mary Kay for a long time, reached director level, leading teams of like 50, 60 women while still being an executive in corporate America. That was probably the one I did the longest, but I dabbled in a little bit of everything. Whether it was ACN, you guys may recognize some of these. Anybody heard of Noni? Yes. The Juice? Creative memory, scrapbooking. Needless to say, I have a busy mind, and I can't even remember all the other ones. But what I found through that whole journey is there was one common thread through all of those as I continued to go from company to company or business to business. And it was really coaching, it was teaching, it was speaking. That was the common thread. And what I didn't know at that time is that's what I was seeking, is like something that really allowed me to do that. And in my corporate journey, there was a similar pattern. I really love leading large teams. I love coaching. I love developing and mentoring. And people would come to me and say, have you ever thought about doing that? As your business, you really should do this. You're really good at it. You're natural. You're approachable, which, a lot of people say you're not approachable when you're an executive. And I had never really thought about it. And I started putting two and two together. I'm like, wow, this is like the perfect development here, kind of accidentally. I can't say it was intentional. As I reflected, I said, what could I share with this team that would be practical, things that you could go back and apply to your specific situation, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an entrepreneur, or whether you're both, that I think have helped me be successful in both areas for, so far for these 25 years, and I'm continuing to write that story. So I started with the first one, and these may be things you've heard of, there may be things you have not. And I typically like to talk about the things that sometimes go unrecognized. I think, was it Gladys? You talked about your authentic self. You talked about standing in front of the mirror and realizing who you are, what do you stand for. And I think it's a direct correlation to what I consider one of the keys of core values. How many of you know what core values are? And how many of you have written them down and defined them for yourself? Good. Well, we still have some hands that didn't go up. That's okay. So I asked, hopefully you guys all have a notebook, pen, paper. So number one is we want to talk about core values. And the reason that core values are important, I believe, is that they're your roadmap for decision making. It is the connection between who you are and what you do, and making sure those are as congruent as possible. So I just got some questions up here that you can think about if you haven't defined them, just take some time and ask yourself these questions. What are those things that are non-negotiable about you? At the core of who you are, these are the things that, if somebody steps on those areas, they're going to get a certain reaction. There are certain things I will absolutely not do because of whatever principle that is. So just take a moment and think about that. It may not be one thing, just start thinking about what are some of those things that are non-negotiable, and then I'll share with you guys mine. There's no right or wrong answer. A lot of times your life experiences, the things that really get on your nerves, the things that really move you, one way or the other, are potentially core values, things that are just part of who you are and what you stand for. The other thing I'll share with you as you guys are writing that about core values is if you make decisions apart from those core values, you can only do that for so long before you find yourself in a place that you are not happy, satisfied, or don't feel fulfilled and joyful in your current situation. So if you're feeling that for any reason, this would be the first place I'd go look. It may not be the job itself. It may not be the business itself. It could just be, I am operating apart from who I really am. And I have, been doing things apart from that, and now things are incongruent. And it's causing stress, it's causing some discontent, and you don't necessarily know why. If you haven't developed this list, I encourage you to develop it. If you have it, I encourage you to revisit it, because you may not be making decisions that are in alignment with what you really believe and who you really are. So that's what I mean by when I say it's a decision-making compass, for your life. Anybody write down some things that they want to share about core values? Anybody? Okay.
I had we're trying to get into the government space, and being a security company, there's a lot of room for that.
Mm-hmm.
People do business different ways, and we're trying to change the game in terms of deliverables and how security looks to the customer. We're trying to make sure that we align ourselves with their brand and all those wonderful things. In doing that, we become marketable. And people have approached me. I actually got a call this week. And in government contracting, which if you're in the business, again, people do business different ways. And
Right.
so if you're a shell, I can't do business with you. So you have to actually be ethical in your deliverables, in your relationships, in how you communicate with the client. That's non-negotiable for me. And so, we want the opportunities, but I don't care if it has 6 zeros or 7 zeros. Because I have a full-time job, I can say I'm okay.
That's awesome.
And I'm thinking, did I just say that?
Yeah.
But because I'm not desperate for the dollar.
Yeah.
I can be selective with my clients.
Absolutely.
And so we're setting the standard for Skylar right now. So when I step off, people already know we're not coming at Jameen like that. Matter of fact, don't even call her, don't even try, because that's not her brand.
Yeah.
Maybe there are other security companies that may take that opportunity, but we're not. So if you tell me you're a shell, and then if I find out you're a shell, it's just not going to work. So.
Yeah, and that's huge, because how many of us made decisions based on money? I have. I've taken a job that I knew wasn't a good fit because of the money, and then I was miserable for 2.5 years, right? It's nothing worse than being an entrepreneur. You're supposed to be in control of your whole environment. You're taking on stuff that you don't have to just because of money, right? So great example. Anybody else want to share?
Just to piggyback on what she was saying, because I remember I had to make those decisions. I was desperate for money because this was my sole source of income. But you have up there faith. For me, I had to make a decision to not work with certain clients in order to get the kind of clients I wanted. So I literally had to be willing to lose some in order to gain what I wanted.
Right.
And it actually worked out, because I realized that, even for someone as a business, you feel like, okay, you just want to service everybody. But to your point, you realize that does cause stress,
Yes.
that causes other things. But there's been more opportunities opened up for the types of people that I want to do business with, because I made that hard decision.
Right.
So,
And it's hard.
it can
It's
be
hard, especially when you need it. It's like, do you see the desperation on my face? I need this deal. Ask anybody else.
For me, it was, one of my core values is collaboration
Okay.
and integrity. And I'm one of those that I will help everybody under the sun try to get wherever they need to do. I mean, it's just in your nature. You don't like to see people
Right.
you don't like to see them struggling. You just want to help. But my business partner, we had a conversation. We both have our own companies, but we collaborate together on a lot of things. There's stuff she does that I don't do, and there's stuff I do that she doesn't do. But if we work together, it brings a great umbrella. But we had a situation where I'm out trying to save everybody, and she gave me a good analogy. She said, when you're working, you have to really be Seabiscuit.
You have to be what?
Be Seabiscuit.
Okay.
You put that on those blinders up. You gotta sit down and dig your feet in, and you can't help everyone.
Right.
Everyone isn't there to help you. Sometimes they act like they are, but they're there to drain you.
Yeah.
So like she said, it gave me that perspective, like, I don't have to help everybody.
Right.
And I can't help everybody.
Absolutely.
So that, it actually brought me back in the focus of what my core values are.
Awesome, great example. We'll take one more. Go ahead.
Mine is faith.
Faith?
Yes, and from the aspect of faith in my business, just the permission to be kind and to allow kindness back and forth. Because what I found, before I started this business, I had my own practice for like 8 years before, and I started out with an international law firm before that. During that 8 years, I did high stakes litigation, and people were just nasty, just really cantankerous environment. And so some clients were cantankerous as well. And for me, I'm like, you know, if I want to create a culture in my business where people are kind, then I can't let clients in that's going to bring that cantankerous
Right.
into my business.
Absolutely. That's a great example. So hopefully you heard some examples given in the room and that you've had an opportunity again to write down a few for yourself if you have not already defined it. Couple extra things I'd ask you to do after you have your list or revisit your list is compare this to how you're living your life, how you're running your business, and say, am I living incongruent with what I say I stand for and what I really believe? You may have some tweaks to make. You may say absolutely yes. In some cases, you may have to say absolutely no. But this is the starting place in my mind on kind of resolving that. Would people know what you value by observing your life or your business? Like if you were to ask somebody else, what do you think I value? Would they be able to have a pretty good guess of what that is because you're living it and you're being it? It's not just words on a piece of paper. And the last one is, if not, then ask yourself, what changes do I need to make? What tweaks do I need to make? Do I need to go in a different direction altogether? So I said I would share with you guys my values. You saw faith up there, my family. In the middle, I have 2 boys one's going into high school and one's going into middle school this fall. Integrity. I'm all about, health and wellness. If you don't have your health, you can't get wealth, and you won't keep it long if you don't. Diversity and inclusion, high value of mine. And continuous learning. As you guys can tell by all the things I've tried, I'm all about learning. And then leadership are my core values. And I would tell you that, at one point in time, I wasn't living according to those. I think I shared with you guys briefly, I was chasing title and money at one point in time, and it came at the cost of spending the time that I said I wanted to spend with the family, and made some bad decisions on some moves and things of that nature that caused some discord for a couple years. So I learned the hard way the importance of living according to who you say you are, despite the money opportunities, and knowing how to say no and what to say yes to. And I'm perfectly clear on that now. So I'll just share that quick story with you. Any other questions or comments around core values? Can you guys see how this would be important, no matter where you are, from an entrepreneur, or doing both? Okay. All right, number 2.
Would you agree that sometimes when we work for different organizations, our core values bump heads with theirs, and
Oh.
that's where the real issue is?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I could talk all day. I won't. I promise, Antoinette, I won't. Yes. Yes.
My list, I can't even check off one.
Yeah.
Or maybe only one.
Yes. I will tell you, I actually changed companies. I told you I only worked for 2. Worked for one for 18 years and the current one for 7. That was the primary reason why I left. Was because I was at that epiphany between what I stood for and what I really believed, and I believed that was going to continue to be more of a conflict than I could bear staying in that particular environment. So number 2, and this one might sound strange to you, but I put servant leadership. And the reason I put servant leadership on there is I truly believe when you serve others, you create value for yourself, right? Because if you can acknowledge and understand other people's needs and what solutions they might need, it opens doors for entrepreneurial ideas and opportunities. It opens up doors if you're going to work for somebody else on how you differentiate yourself as an entrepreneur to do something bigger in the confinements of the jobs that you have. So if you focus on others, you'll always be needed. You'll always create value for yourself. So start asking yourself the questions around you. It doesn't matter whether you work for somebody else, whether you work for yourself, if you're working for doing both. How can I help those around me? How can I help you? How can I support you? I know this organization's probably asking each other that all the time, as I heard all of the intertwinings and how everybody's supporting each other through their business adventures. You're adding value to your neighbor. And when you add value, you don't have to work hard for opportunities. People seek you out when you're adding value. It's been my experience. So I think I shared with you earlier, I've done 16 jobs in 25 years. A lot of that I didn't apply. I've interviewed 3 times for jobs. Right out of college, one time at Frito-Lay, and then when I changed companies, 3 times. And the rest were, we think this would be a good opportunity for you. Would you like to do X, Y, and Z? Have you ever thought about coming to this department because we saw the work you did over here? So I didn't interview. Now that's rare, but I really, as I think back, I attribute it to the fact that I was always entrepreneurial at my job, or entrepreneurial, looking to solve problems, challenge status quo, and always be my best. Didn't compare myself to anybody else. And in the meantime, people notice your work, again, serving others, helping them be their best, then you automatically will move forward yourself. You don't have to work hard, you don't have to step on people to get there. How many people have been in those kind of environments? That in order for you to look good, you got to step on some other people to get there. That's not fun. What is one thing I can do to make your job life easier? I'm sure if we ask that question in this room, everybody has one thing they would say, here's how you could help me, right? I'm branching out to my business. Here's how you could help me. You could tell somebody. I could use your financial, planning. I could use your how do I get unstuck and find my authentic self. I mean, there was plenty of examples in the room that you guys have an opportunity to add value to someone else and or ask that question to. So again, it's maybe not the typical thing you may hear, but these are what I call the non-tangible differentiators, I think, in business, whether you're working for somebody else or working for yourself. So ask yourself those questions. And I think you will, if you already have great opportunities, I think you'll see that door continue to stay open and more opportunities come your way. Any questions or comments around servant leadership, as I know I want to keep it moving for our time? Does that one make sense? Have you guys heard that term, servant leadership before? Okay. All right, number 3. I'm only going to do 4, just in the interest of time. But this one, again, may be a little atypical as well. But develop and foster a learning mindset. The more you know, the more value you can bring. The more you know, nobody can take that away from you, right? That was kind of my defense mechanism. It's like, okay, y'all don't want to tell me nothing, don't want to show me nothing. I'll go figure it out on my own. I'm going to learn more. Because once you have knowledge, you get to determine what you do with it. I can share it or I can not share it. I could use it here, I could use it somewhere else, right? So always be in a learning position. You can always learn something from somebody. Even some of the most difficult people. I learned so much about what not to do than I did what to do. I was like, when I get in a position like I'm never doing that. Or, I never would treat people like that when I have a team. I learned more about what not to do, which really kind of helped me form who did I want to be in leadership positions. Again, another differentiation. Most people aren't developing themselves, they're waiting for other people to do it for them. Particularly if you're working in a corporation, I hear it all the time. They're not developing me. Okay, are you developing yourself? Can't expect them to do what you're not doing. And you don't have to wait on them. Nowadays, there's so much at your fingertips that don't cost a dime for you to do. So if you haven't developed your personal learning plan, I don't care where you're sitting, you've got something to learn to make your business stronger, to scale it, to scope it, to find more resources, whatever it is, there's something for you to learn. So develop that learning plan. What books are you reading? I get a lot of times, I don't have time to read. You don't have time not to read. The world is moving way too fast for us not to be keeping up with what's going on. Or you got to have somebody reading for you then, if you can't read. Listen in your car. Get off Facebook chit-chatting and reinvest that time. What courses, seminars, I mean, you guys are here, so I don't think I have to talk to you guys about that one. What courses, seminars, and workshops will you attend? What professional publications will you subscribe to? What competencies are you developing? Have you done your own self-assessment to say, I know these are my strengths, but here's a couple opportunities that I know I've got to get better in if I'm going to take my business to the next level, if I'm going to be the next promotable person within my company, or both, for those of us that are both. So have a learning plan. Again, the more you know, the more value you bring, right? So I'm definitely in the never stop learning camp. Now, my mom would argue that I'm just a jack of all trades, master of none, but it's all about your perspective. And then the last one I share with you, and I think this one, and I had a hard time I was like, I've got to narrow this as we only have an hour. But I thought this one's probably the biggest one, is be a part of the solution. If you listen to, social media, you watch the news every day, everybody's talking about the problems, but a whole lot less voices talking about solutions. And even a smaller proportion actually doing anything about the solutions they're talking about, right? So get in that finite number of people that are solution-oriented, bringing value-added solutions to repetitive, chronic problems. Again, you're adding value to your brand, whether you're an entrepreneur, intrapreneur, or both. So what are the repetitive problems or pain points or complaints in your organization that you're constantly, it's just constant conversation about the same things over and over and over again? Whether that's in your own business, what feedback are you getting back from your clients over and over and over again that you still haven't solved? Ask yourselves those questions, begin to bring solutions to those, and again, take your business to the next level, reposition yourself within your company to be that next, promotable candidate. Those are the things that are going to differentiate you. Most people just complain about problems and play victim to the problems versus saying, what's the root cause? What can I impact? You can't change everybody else, but you control you. How are you going to react? What are you going to choose to do? Are you going to choose to gripe? Are you going to choose to try to influence somebody to do something about it? Are you going to take the courageous step and put a solution on the table and say, can we talk about this? Or we can just be in the chit chat in the corner at the water coolers, complaining like everybody else. These are the things that I have found have worked for me. Without me, again, having to be standing on the tables going, look at me, I want to do this next. I really think those were the things that really helped me do what I've done. I'm not special. I just tried to put myself in the niches where everybody else wasn't. So look at what everybody else is doing and do something different. Do something different. I mean, today, the name of the game is differentiation. There's a million businesses out there. There's a million financial planners, right? There's a million people who wrote a book. What differentiates you? What solution or problem are you specifically solving that nobody else has? That's where you get your exponential client base and opportunities from. And it's going to require you to see, it may not be obvious. It may not be like, oh, it's this. You may have to really sit and ponder and meditate on it, pray on it. Like, what is it? What's my unique proposition that I offer? Inside the four walls of somebody else's company or within the four walls of my own? Make sense? So those are like the four. I could go on, and I won't, about other things that I think were big factors. But I tried to pull what I thought were the four biggest, maybe not the ones we talk about every single day. We can always talk about working hard and getting results, and we all kind of know that. But what are those intangible things that we sometimes don't talk about that can make the big difference?